Namaste, yogis, and welcome to a summer solstice yin practice. My name is Melinda, and welcome to this class today. So our practice today is all about drawing in and tapping into our intuitive self and counterbalancing everything that's going on in the outside world. So summer is that time of where things start to get really hot. It's the longest day of the year. There's a lot of activity going on outside of us. There's, events and parties and time to be outside and be super active, which is such a wonderful time of year. But it's equally important to take the time to practice something like a yin practice where you're drawing inward and you're reflecting and you're just letting go and surrendering. So today's practice is all about letting go and surrendering, tapping into your inner self and taking time for stillness. You will need a couple props for your practice today. I invite you to go ahead and grab a bolster if you have one, and if you don't, get a pillow from your bed and that will suffice. If you happen to have a blanket nearby as well to sit on, like this one here, I have a nice cotton yoga blanket. It doesn't need to be a yoga blanket, but something with maybe a little more support and firmness. And that is not necessary, but it could help in some of the postures we're going to be holding today. So our yin practice is traditionally tapping into longer holds, but it's not just to stretch the muscles, it's to get into the fascia a little bit. And so each pose will hold for about 3 minutes, a minute and a half if it's something we're doing on each side. So I did bring my watch today so I can set the timer for 3 minutes. So if you're wondering when I'm looking at my watch, that's what that's all about. So let's grab our props, get yourself set up, and we will get started. So our first posture today is we're going to come into reclined butterfly and use our bolsters for that. I'm going to give you a few options. Again, if you have a bed pillow, that will work. You won't get as much support, but obviously use what you have. I'm going to invite you to come into this pose without support of other props. So I'm going to set my blanket aside. If you need the blanket, I will give you that variation afterwards. So you're going to set your bum just a few inches in front of the bolster, and you want the bolster to protect your low back, but give you a little space here. We're going to recline back and draw your feet together. And your feet don't need to be all the way up here. They can be out a little farther. Just find what's comfortable for you. If you find you need some extra support, you can grab some small pillows like this couch pillow here and just wedge these underneath your knees, and you can get extra support that way. If this is too much on your low back, and I'm going to move these guys out of the way, you can sit on your yoga blanket and you can unfold it a little bit. This will just give you a little bit less of a curve in your low back. And you can sit this way and relax into the pose. And that feels quite lovely for me since my hips are a little tight today. So I'm going to take this variation and we're going to hold this pose for about 3 minutes. I invite you to do a couple of things with your arms. You can just let them sprawl out to the side, like so. Or if you'd like, you can interlace your hands behind your head, place your head gently back down, and take your elbows wide. Or you can grab for opposite elbows and let your arms come up overhead and relax into the pose this way. So several variations. You can also just let your arms come down by your side or rest on your body if all those are uncomfortable, but I like the out of chest opener. So I'm going to take this variation. It also gives my head a little extra support. And let's just begin to tap into our breath. Notice how you're feeling in this moment as we begin our practice. Just beginning to lengthen the inhales and exhales so they become even. You can take a light ujjayi breath. If you're not familiar with that type of breathing, it's just a slight constriction in the back of the throat on the inhale and the exhale. It kind of sounds like Darth Vader. But we're going to take a very light version of that, so we don't want to make this the heaviest breath. Too much of this breath can be very heating, and we want to counteract the heat. But the breath also brings focus inward. And if that doesn't feel right for you, just let the breath be natural and just work on counting the inhales and the exhales. And if the arm position becomes too much, perhaps just let your arms float out to the side, moving any props out of the way. In Yin Yoga, we can find often like discomfort and things of that nature arising. We don't want any pain or pinching, so be mindful. So if you need to kind of come out for a moment, reset yourself, come back in, I invite you to do that. And as the discomfort arises, I invite you to breathe through it and let it go. It might be more of a mental discomfort. Sometimes it's physical, and that's when you just make a little adjustment in the body or come out and come back in. Begin to let your face soften and release and relax. And there's our time. So let's take just 2 more breaths. Noticing how you're feeling in this moment. And we'll slowly begin to come out of the pose. Let your knees come up and knock together for just a moment. Let your arms come down by your side. Feet come wide. This will just help neutralize your hips. This is one of my favorite poses to take between poses. Then gently roll over onto one side and press yourself up slowly. Beautiful. You can slide your bolster off to the side for now. I'm going to use my blanket to place under my hips for this next pose. Not necessary, but it's just that little extra support. And we're going to come to a butterfly position. So let the soles of your feet come together. Knees come wide. And if this isn't enough support, you can always try the bolster under your sits bones. Sometimes it gets a little too cushy, so I prefer something a little firmer. And we're just going to be here for a few breaths. This is a little transition pose. So think about lengthening through your spine. And then gently fold forward, letting your hands just wrap around your toes. And you don't need to go very far, but just taking that gentle opening. Let your face soften and relax and draw inward, perhaps closing your eyes. We are taking this practice for the solstice as a time to surrender, release, and let go. Setting the to-do list aside, taking a little time for self-care and release. Let's take one more breath. Stay for the exhale. Gently press yourself up. Let your knees come together. Let your fingertips come behind and just let your knees go side to side for a moment, just to release that. All right, we're going to take one more nice deep hip opener here. Letting your legs come wide. And you can keep your seat up on the blanket or you can come off the blanket. So just decide what feels right for you today. I'm going to come off the blanket for this one. And just let your toes, we're not going to keep a long flex in our toes like we would in a hatha practice. So just kind of let them naturally extend out, not pointed, not flexed, just relaxed. Again, ground down through your sits bones. And then we're going to just take a gentle fold forward. We don't want a lot of rounding in the spine. We're going to lengthen first. So think about hinging from your hips, a nice little bend in your elbows. And we'll hold here for the next 3 minutes. Again, allowing your face to soften, your jaw to release, releasing tension from the space between your eyebrows. Perhaps your arms begin to come forward a little bit, and then you can begin to round into your spine slightly. So this will be a nice release for the low back, as well as the back of the legs. And if it's excessive rounding, come up a little bit. Sometimes we come into these postures a little bit too exuberantly, and we think, oh, this stretch is fine. And then as we hold and we release, we might start to feel some tingling sensations. That's when you want to back off a little bit. With each posture, I invite you to just close the eyes and come back to your breath. Perhaps counting in for 4 or 5, and then letting the exhale match the inhale. This is a great way to focus your mind if you find it wandering. Or even if you're quite tired and you want some energy, this is a wonderful way to maintain a little bit of focus in each pose. It might feel good to sigh it out audibly. I always encourage anything that feels natural to you to take that time here. And you may notice your forearms beginning to come down to the ground, or just come a little bit closer. And if you're feeling some discomfort, allow the breath to go there. I like to imagine each inhale just filling my whole body with vibrant energy and life force, filling it up with oxygen, and then every exhale, I direct the breath to where it's needed the most in that moment, softening in and releasing the physical tension, the mental tension, and surrendering. In yoga, this practice of surrender is called Ishvara Pranidhana. It's the act of letting go, handing things over to whether it be a higher power, the universe, your higher self, whatever interpretation you have is right, and it's right for you. But it helps us relieve stress and anxiety when we can just trust and surrender. Let's take 2 more breaths. On the next inhale, begin to press yourself up. Walk your hands under your shoulders. And when I come into a little side bend, legs stay as they are. You can use your bolster if you'd like to support your forearm, and I'll show you these options. So with the side bend, I'm just going to let my right hand come to the inside of my right leg. Left hand behind your head. You're going to lift the heart and then just take a little crescent over. If this feels like too much, you can have this bolster, you can prop it just behind you. And that works as well. And if you feel like you want a little support under your sits bones for this one, go ahead and grab your blanket, slide it under your sits bones, and let the feet come back out wide and come back into the pose. And that actually feels quite lovely. We're just going to do this one about 1.5 minutes each side. So go ahead and set yourself up in the version that feels right for you. And letting our hand come behind our head and our head rest gently in our hand really allows us to release tension from the head because we're supported here. So if you're like this, that's not really supporting you. Come on up. Use your bolster. Find what version works. And you can always prop your arm on your leg as well. And then let the stretch come into the armpit, down the side waist. And I personally feel it right here in my waist quite a bit. And everybody's a little different, so just notice. You can close your eyes, let your gaze soften. And if this hand behind the head really doesn't work, you can take an extended version. I find that a little bit more work and a little harder. And come back to the count of your breath, releasing and letting go. Let's take about 3 more breaths here. On your next inhale, slowly lift up, come back to center. Let's everything neutralize for just a moment, maybe even taking a little fold forward. And then we'll make our way on to the other side. If you need to move your prop over, go ahead and do that. I encourage you to try it without the prop and try it with the prop and see which one feels better. And so left forearm comes to the inside of your left leg. Right arm behind your head, supporting your head. Lift your chest a little and then take a gentle fold over. Your head's not really leaning so much into your hand as it is just feeling that little bit of support from the hand. And for me, this is one I really struggle with. I have very tight muscles around my waist. And so this is one that I don't want to push too much. So maybe I come out on this side and I use my bolster just as I experiment with it. And that feels maybe a little bit better for me. Sometimes starting with the prop and then easing into the other variation, the deeper variation, is the best way to go. But I'm all about experimentation. Anytime we have those audible sighs, it's wonderful. It's such a release for us physically and mentally. Give yourself a little smile, perhaps. Breathe into any discomfort that might arise for you. It's the beauty of our yin practice, as we tailor it to our own bodies. We have the time to do that. Often in a faster practice, we don't have the time to experiment. All right, one more breath in and out. And then gently press yourself up. Again, just a little gentle forward fold, release. Draw your knees in and use the support of your hands to do that. And let's come on over to a tabletop. Grab your bolster, slide your blanket out of the way. And we will come into a supported puppy pose. Also called melting heart pose or anahata asana. Or maybe it's anahatasana. Either way, we're going to draw our forearms to the bolster. Let your elbows be supported. Toes can be tucked or untucked depending on how you feel today. Then we're just going to begin to let your forehead kind of come between your arms. And again, you can kind of experiment if you want to draw your arms wide. If you want to draw palms together. If this is not working for you and you're like, no way, you can set the bolster aside and just come into a traditional variation with your palms down, let your forehead rest. The bolster actually allows you to come a little deeper into the posture. We're going to set our time for 3 minutes. So again, forearms on the bolster and just let your head come down. And it can have a little support if you'd like support with for your forehead here. I find letting my head come to the inside of my arms is a nice way to open through the chest. And come back in and let go. Draw back inwards. And you might find, I'm finding, I need to like walk myself back a little bit. And that allows my forehead to rest on the mat. Come back to your breath. You can use that same light ujjayi breath if you'd like.
just to draw attention away from any slight discomfort that you might be feeling. And if you start to get tingling sensation, come on out, readjust yourself, and come back in. And that's what I'm doing. So find your sweet spot. That was a little too much intensity for me. And I know I tend to get that in my shoulder stretches, so I need to be mindful and not get too much of a tingling sensation. I think one of the hardest practices about a yin practice is breathing through the discomfort. The agitation, perhaps, is a better word. So coming back to that count of your inhales and exhales, evening them out, slowing them down, finding the balance. Listening to that light ujjayi breath is very soothing. It sounds like ocean waves. Let's take one more nice deep breath in and exhale, release. Gently begin to press yourself up, coming back into a tabletop. Sit back on your heels for just a moment. Draw your eyes closed. Notice how you're feeling. Just noticing how your energy has changed from these few poses that we've done. All right, let's go ahead and move our bolster out of the way for this next one completely, and blanket. We're going to come into a shoulder stretch. So lowering down onto your belly, you're going to let your left arm, we'll start left, come straight out to the side. Place your left temple onto the ground. And then begin to press yourself onto your left side. Perhaps your right toes come behind you. And I like to tent my right fingertips here. Deepening the stretch as much as is comfortable for you. And we're not going to be here the full 3 minutes. So take your time coming into the posture. If this doesn't give you any stretch, we can make it really deep and come over onto your back. And place your right foot onto the ground, and that will really deepen the stretch. And if it doesn't feel good at all, come on out and find yourself a different variation. You can take a slight bend in the elbow, and that usually makes it more intense, but it stretches kind of a different set of muscles. So play around with it. And we'll be here for about another minute on this side. Just softening, relaxing, opening through the shoulder girdle, the pectoral muscles. Let's take one more breath in here. And exhale, release. Let your right foot come back down. Draw back to center. Press into your palms. And we'll take it to the other side. This time, let your right arm come straight out to the side. Place your right cheek or temple onto the mat.
Roll onto your right side and then use your left hand to tent your fingertips. Press yourself up, opening any amount. And maybe your legs aren't as open on this side. Just find a leg position that works for you. You want it to feel intense enough of a stretch without any pain or pinching. And if it's not feeling good, come back out of it. Set yourself up again, and then come back into it. We'll be here for about another minute. Tuning back into the breath, tuning back into the self. Yin practice is so lovely to draw back in. Letting go, surrendering. Let's take one more breath in. Exhale to release. Let your left leg come back down to the ground. Press into your hands. Press up onto your forearms for just a moment. We'll come into Sphinx for just about a minute. Let your hips come onto the ground. Toes come to the corners of your mat. Press your elbows into the mat. And then imagine drawing your heart forward and drawing your elbows back towards your body. A little opening through the upper chest and thoracic spine. Maybe release any clenching you might have in your buttocks right now. Just drawing awareness back into the body, opening through the heart and chest. This is a lovely pose to take in the morning, providing energy, a little heart opening for the day, a little self-love. Perhaps even coming to a mantra you might be using regularly. It's a wonderful time to repeat that to yourself as we hold these poses. Your mantra could be a simple affirmation. Just finding what feels true for you in this moment, bringing it into your heart. All right, let's begin to release this pose. Let your forehead come down, placing it on the back of your hands. Just give your hips a little wiggle side to side. Gently press into your hands, come up to tabletop. Let's take a forward fold as our last pose before moving over to the wall. And if you don't have a wall today, I will give you some other options. Or you can just take Shavasana. Let your legs extend out, toes can kind of relax. Take a long spine, and if you'd like support under your hips, again, a great spot for a blanket. Propping your hips up. And just on the edge of the sits bones, you don't want your whole bum on the blanket. Lengthen through the spine, and then gently begin to walk your hands out. And let your spine round. So we're taking a nice deep low back release. If you'd like to deepen this a little more, you can bend through your knees and interlace your arms underneath. Really rounding into the back. So find what works for you. We'll be here again for 3 minutes. That might be a little too much with the bent knees, and you can always have a little bend in your knees no matter which version you're in. Play around with it, release into it. The toes relax and the feet release tension. The ankles release tension. Sometimes I like to lengthen on the inhale and then roll back down on the exhale. Just a couple times to let myself feel into the pose. And I might need to adjust my feet, let them come a little wider. And everybody's body is so different. So everything I invite here or instruct here is an invitation. And it's all about you finding your version. Perhaps you can begin to deepen the pose a little bit. Getting a nice low back release. It's again softening the face. Tension between the eyebrows, the low jaw, even the tongue, and let it relax into the bottom of the mouth. The back of your neck is long, or even rounded forward a little. Really letting the low back feel the stretch. Sighing it out as it feels good for you. Giving yourself a smile as it feels good for you. Coming back to the evenness of breath, the breath count. The breath is our life force energy. It really is representation of these cycles of life. Cycles of the season, cycles of the day, of the moon. The breath is a single cycle of life and death in one brief moment. Let's take one more nice deep breath in. And exhale it out. Bend through your knees, unwind your arms, press yourself up to seated, pause for just a moment. Once again, walk your hands behind you, bend through your knees, and just take that nice gentle windshield wiper. And move your props out of the way. All right, let's make our way into our final pose. I invite you to take legs up the wall, and you can take your bolster with you. I will show you on the wall, and then I'll show you in the middle of the room if you don't have a wall. But legs up the wall is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to slide your bolster up next to the wall, and then you're going to have to just wiggle yourself up here. And there's not really, clearly not a graceful way to get into this pose. Not with the bolster. It's a little easier when you have a block because you can slide it under. So if you want to put your bum up against the wall and slide the bolster under, you want it right under your sacrum, this flat area just below your low back. And then just let your feet rest. And they can rest hip width apart. They can rest wide, which might feel really nice. And we'll be here again for 3 minutes. So find your variation. And again, you can start in one variation and then move to the other. If you don't have a wall, you're going to do the same setup in the middle of the room, in the mat, not the middle of the room, I guess. But you're going to grab your bolster, put it alongside you, lower down, and then come into a bridge pose to put the bolster underneath. Find your sacrum, and then let your legs come up. And just let them hang out. Either way, this pose is wonderful for just letting the energy come down from the feet. This is a fantastic end of day pose, but it's always great at the end of a practice as well. Just lets the blood kind of flow down. All that stuck and stagnant energy begins to flow. Just let it go, release. If this does not feel good for you, just come down and take a Shavasana. This is our alternative to Shavasana today. Coming back to the breath, letting the Ujjayi breath go. Just letting it feel natural, flowing in and out of the nose. Let it go, release. If there's anything you've been holding on to still, let those last threads of tension release with each exhale. Knowing this is your time to welcome in the new season, to begin to draw inward a little bit, cooling the body. And surrendering to the higher self. One more breath. And slowly begin to let your legs come down, perhaps moving your prop out of the way. If you are in the version I'm in, go ahead and lift your hips, slide it off to the side, lower down slowly. Make your way onto one side, and we will all meet together in a comfortable seat. Bolster can go off to the side. If you'd like to prop up your sits bones for a little bit of breath work, I invite you to do that. And otherwise, we'll just come take a nice comfortable position, cross-legged position, or whatever feels best for you. We'll end our practice with just a little bit of breath work. So we will focus on cooling the body a little bit more. And this is a great breath work to do anytime you're quite hot. But it's wonderful as well for the summer solstice, of course, because of the time of year. And it's called Sitali breath. And you're going to breathe in through the tongue. So if you can curl your tongue, you will make that kind of curled shape like this. You can't curl your tongue, just kind of make a gentle U shape. And we're going to breathe the breath in over the tongue, and then we'll exhale out the nose. And you'll feel the coolness of that breath coming in over the tongue, cooling the body down. So it looks like this. We'll just keep the count. Nice easy count of 4 in, 4 out. And we'll keep it nice and balanced in the body. So if you are ready, go ahead and draw your eyes closed if that feels right for you. Lengthen through the spine, ground down through your sits bones. And begin. We'll be here for about 1 minute. Release the tension in the forehead. Let the jaw relax with each exhale. Imagine the crown growing towards the sky, getting a little bit longer with each inhale. take 2 more rounds. Now just let the breath flow evenly and naturally. Coming in and out of the nose. And perhaps if you'd like to take Cosmic Mudra with me, you're going to place the right palm up, the left palm on top of the right. Let the tips of the thumbs touch, and then the mudra will be just in front of the navel, but not touching the navel. And then lengthen through the spine, the back of the neck. The whole face relax and release. Begin to tap into your third eye energy, allowing your awareness to come to the space between your eyebrows. This is our center of intuition. It is our internal guide. It is our higher knowing. As you draw your awareness here, I invite you to just notice what comes up. Let the eyes be easy in their sockets. As if you find the mind wandering, just come back. Come back to the breath. Perhaps beginning to lengthen the exhales. Calming the mind. Grounding the body. And coming back to self. You're welcome to stay in this meditative position as long as you like. You can let go of the breath, control as you hold. If you're ready to end your practice, I invite you to gently release your hands. You can take your hands to prayer. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. If it feels right for you, we'll take a single sound of Om to come together in harmony throughout the world. Exhale the breath completely. Inhale deeply through the nose. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy summer solstice. Namaste. Take care of yourself today. Know that you can come back to this practice whenever you're feeling that need for a little cooling, calming, and grounding. Namaste.